All right, I'm here to ask you one of the most important, but also one of the most awkward questions that I'm going to ask this entire semester. Who's your bae? I know, that was kind of weird, but it's an important question because it's going to be fundamental for your historiographic projects that you're going to start and have already started this week. In this video, I'm going to help you answer that question, who's your bae? And I'm going to talk through what that means and why it's significant for doing secondary source analysis research. All right, let's get going. Okay, I'm going to break down this video into two main sections. In the first one, I'm going to answer the question, who's your bae? I'm going to tell you what this acronym stands for, and then we're going to look more closely at what these secondary sources are and how to distinguish them. In the second section, I'm going to tell you about how to find secondary sources. I'm going to bring you through some databases, and I'm going to show you kind of my tips and techniques for doing secondary source research. Okay, so first things first, who's your bae? Okay, here's the central question of this lesson. Who's your bae? I'm going to say it over and over again. You're going to get totally annoyed with me using that. But let's answer it first and foremost by just figuring out what this acronym means. So, who's your bae? Well, it's really simple. Your bae is books, articles, and essays. Books, articles, and essays, B.A.E. That's who your bae is. These are the main types of secondary sources that historians use when they consult secondary sources for purposes of historiographic essays or for anything they're using secondary sources for. Now, it might seem kind of straightforward that, the best secondary sources are books, articles, and essays. I could maybe end the video right here. But the reality is that we need to dig deeper into what these things really are in order to understand how to use them. And the beginning of that has to do with understanding the type of history that we're doing when we're writing, say, a historiographic essay. Historiographic essays are pieces of academic history. They are analyzing what professional historians have said. That makes them a part of academic history. And if you remember from an earlier lesson, academic history is kind of distinct from public history and popular history. It's no better or worse, it's just different. It's just doing history in a slightly different way. Historiographic essays are part of academic history, so they pay attention to academic sources, right? Historical sources written by professional historians. So first thing we need to know is when we define who our bae is, our bae are books, articles, and essays, but books, articles, and essays that are written by professional historians and within the kind of limits and criteria that define professional academic history. Another way of putting this is that the books, articles, and essays that you're going to rely on for your historiographic essays and for writing history pass what we might call sort of our academic legitimacy test. What do we mean by academic legitimacy? Well, essentially we mean that it is a piece of legitimate sort of professional academic history, as opposed to, say, popular history or public history. Again, no better, no worse. Just different in terms of how it's produced and what it's trying to do. And the main thing that determines academic legitimacy is what we call peer review. Peer review is basically just a system whereby multiple scholars read and attest sort of manuscripts of works before that work is published, either as a book, article, or essay. The whole purpose of peer review is for specialists in the particular field that the essay is about, right, or that the thing is about, can catch potential mistakes before it gets published and assure that the piece abides by professional standards. For example, pieces of academic history, more often than not, have footnotes and citations so that people can go and check back on the sources that are used and follow the research trail of the particular piece. And so what peer review really looks like is that when a piece is being submitted to be published, that piece is then sent out by the publisher to specialists in that particular field. And then the specialists read it and they give notes and feedback and critiques and things and send it back to the publisher. And the publisher then uses all of that feedback to decide whether to publish the thing or not, or whether to go back to the author and say, you have to make these changes and then we'll consider publishing it. That's the system of peer review. So books, articles, and essays that are professional academic history are things that have gone through peer review. So that begs the question, how do you know if something is peer reviewed? Well, there are a few ways that we can focus on to kind of determine if something is peer reviewed. The easiest is just look to see who the publisher is. If the publisher of, say, a book is a university press, then we know that that book was peer reviewed. Because one of the things that is fundamental to university presses is that they all use the system of peer review before they publish works. Sometimes, though, a publisher is not a university press, but still does peer review. The best way to figure that out is really, honestly, just to go to the website of the publisher and see if they talk about it. Most academic publishers that are not associated with university presses or with universities will say on their website, yes, we do peer review, usually under some tab for submissions or something like that. And then finally, in the very, very rare case that a book is published, say, not at a university press, and the publisher doesn't really talk about peer review on their website or something, well, then you can kind of look to see retroactively if that book has been reviewed via book reviews in academic journals. If that book's been reviewed, say, multiple times by specialists in the field, then you can sort of take that as a sign that it's been peer reviewed. If not before the process, at least after the process of publication. So you can know sort of if that book is worthwhile to use for your historiographic essays or for whatever projects you're doing. Okay, so let's look a little more closely at our 3 types of secondary sources to see what this means for each of these types. So first and foremost, for books, for academic history books, we need to recognize that these are not the same as other types of books. Not all books are alike. I love the Harry Potter novels, right? But they're different from, say, an academic monograph written by a professional historian like Kenneth Pomerantz. So just because you found a book in, say, the Baylor Library, it doesn't mean that it's a piece of academic history. What we're really looking for when we say books, right? When we say, who's your bae, and you say books, is we're really looking for academic monographs. Okay, what is an academic monograph? Well, an academic monograph is essentially a book written by one author, monograph, and that author is an academic historian, right? A professional historian. But there's another feature to academic monographs that sort of makes them unique. As opposed to, say, textbooks or other books that are more sort of general surveys, academic monographs are books with historical arguments. What that means is that the point of the book is for the historian to put forth an interpretation of the past that they have made based on the analysis of mostly primary sources. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for books that are academic monographs, not just a textbook, not a sort of, history of the world kind of survey text or something. You're looking for specific researched studies of particular historical topics. All right, third, to write a historiographic essay, you will be analyzing the work of historians. So there are lots of academic books out there, books by psychologists, books by political scientists, books by sociologists. They're all great books, nothing against them. But the purpose of a historiographic essay is to figure out what historians have written about the past. Okay, lastly, what we want are books that are published mostly by university presses. Will there be some exceptions? Sure, absolutely. There are some other wonderful presses that are not university presses that publish great academic historical monographs. But on the whole, your real litmus test should be, is this a book by a historian and was it published by a university press? All right, so that's books. Now let's look at journal articles. First, let's figure out what the heck a journal article is. Well, a journal article is a sort of short piece, something usually in the ballpark of 20 to 30 pages, that is included in a volume of a journal. Now, what's an academic journal? Well, an academic journal is a serial publication with new articles written by different people in each issue. All right, what do I mean by serial publication? No, not that serial. Not that serial either. Serial publication means that it is a journal that is published regularly, usually 2 times a year or 4 times a year or something like that. But in each issue, there is a new set of articles, and all the articles are written by different people. For example, check out the table of contents here for the Journal of Modern History, Volume 40. You can see that in the first issue that was published in March 1968, there are four different articles, or 3 articles and 1 review article, and then a bunch of book reviews, right? But all those articles written by different people. Okay, how do you know if a journal is legit, right? Or a journal article that you found is legit? Again, the same sorts of tests of academic legitimacy take place for journals. Just look to see who the publisher is. Most academic journals are published by university presses. Most journals, too, are affiliated with professional historical organizations. Again, the American Historical Review is the journal of the American Historical Association. Okay, the most complicating one is essays. What do we mean by an essay? Well, an academic essay is an article-length piece that's published in an edited volume. Okay, what is an edited volume? An edited volume is essentially just a book, but it's a book that isn't written by one person, a la a monograph. Instead, it's a book that's written by lots and lots of authors, tons of authors who each kind of contribute one chapter to the book. Here's an example right here. This is a book called Scripting Revolution. The editors of the whole book are Keith Michael Baker and Dan Edelstein. But if you look at the content page, you can see that there are lots of contributors. Each chapter is an individual kind of essay written by a different historian. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking, well, that sounds exactly like a journal. What's the difference between an article, a journal article, and an essay? Well, I'm glad you asked. The difference between a journal article and an essay is that journal articles are published in journals, which are serial publications. Essays are published in edited volumes, which are sort of one-off publications. What that means is that a journal is published regularly every single year, but an edited volume is just a book that comes out one time. So essays and articles are essentially the same thing, functionally speaking. They just show up in 2 different places, one in a serial-produced journal, and the other in a one-off edited volume. And again, like books and like articles, for good academic essays, what we need to see is that they are peer-reviewed or that they pass the academic legitimacy test. And really the best way to do it is to look to see if they're published with a university press. All right, so now we know what the main secondary sources are that we're going to focus on for our historiographic essays and really for just professional history in general. Books, articles, and essays. In this next section, I'm going to tell you how to find them. Okay, so now that we know who your Bae is, now we're going to focus on another question. Where's your Bae? Let's start with books. So there are lots of different ways to find books, and I'm going to take you through a few of them. First thing you can do, and really the best place to start, is to search the Baylor Library website using keywords. So what the Baylor Library website will get you is basically access to whatever's in the Baylor catalog. Whatever books that are in the library or the library has a subscription to will be available through the Baylor Library website. But my big suggestion here is to start with keywords, but then to use subject terms. I'm going to show you what this looks like. Okay, so what's the process for finding books through the Baylor Library catalog? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. You just go to the Baylor Library website, and you type in this search bar here, which is the one search bar, whatever keywords you want to work on. For example, today we'll start with women's suffrage, United States. So OneSearch is a really powerful tool because it searches not only books, but articles and all sorts of other documents and resources that are out there. If we just want to focus on books, though, we can easily filter it by using this tab over here. And what do we find with our results? Well, we've already located some really good search results for our historiographic essay. The one at the very top here, Women's Movements in the United States, Women's Suffrage, Equal Rights, and Beyond, by Stephen Buechler, we know is potentially a probably pretty good book. Why do we know that? Well, because it's from the University Press. Check that out. So the easy response here is just to go find it and check out this book. This one happens to be at the Moody Jones Libraries, and the Baylor website, the Baylor Library website has this wonderful little tool called Find It. And if you click here, it'll show you exactly where it is. This is Jones Library, second floor, this shelf right here. Boom. So we found one book, but we can find lots of others by using some of the tools built into the OneSearch catalog. So for example, let's say we were interested in this book too, right? Recasting the Vote, How Women of Color Transformed the Suffrage Movement. University of North Carolina Press, 2020. That looks like a great potential source for a beachhead source. So obviously we can read it online because the library has a subscription to it as an ebook, but we can also use it to find other books like it. If you click into it, for example, what you'll get is the full entry here. And it gives you everything like the publisher and the publication date and everything like that. But then if you scroll down, here are the subject terms. These subject terms are really, really useful because essentially what they are is like hashtags. All the books that have this same hashtag you can sort of find by clicking on that hashtag, and then it'll list it out for you. So for example, if we wanted to know more about suffragists, United States history, we could just click here, and now it's doing a new search on this subject heading. And look at that, we get a lot of other books that seem to be really good. Why They Marched, Untold Stories of Women Who Fought for Their Right to Vote, March of the Women, a revisionist analysis of the campaign for women's suffrage, and lots of others. So this is a great way to build out a bibliography of books, right? Find one that's right on your subject, click into it, use the subject terms. It's as easy as that. Second suggestion is that once you find something in the Baylor Library website, go find it. Actually find it, like in the library. Because when you do that, you're going to be able to find a lot of other books that are all on the same topic. That's because libraries are organized based on the Library of Congress cataloging system. And the way this cataloging system works is that basically books that are on the same theme are shelved together. So if you find one book that's directly on your topic, chances are the books next to it are also going to be on your topic. This is a really easy way, called browsing the stacks, right? A really easy way of expanding your bibliography very, very quickly. Third, if you don't find much in the Baylor Library website, that probably means that Baylor doesn't have a lot of books that are on your particular topic. That's okay. You don't have to panic. You don't have to switch topics. It just means that you need to search a little harder in some different places. The best place to search for books that aren't at Baylor is in a database called Worldcat. So Worldcat is an incredibly powerful database and a really, really important one for you to know. In brief, Worldcat is basically just a catalog of, or a database of the catalogs of, virtually every library in the world, hence Worldcat. Really, it searches libraries all across the world and tells you which libraries have which books. So if you do the same exact search that you did in the Baylor Library catalog, and if it came up empty in the Baylor Library catalog, it might be filled with books in Worldcat. The problem with Worldcat is that since it searches like catalogs of libraries all over the world, like thousands of libraries, your search results can get really big really fast. So in order to avoid getting totally overwhelmed, I think the best way to use Worldcat is to first start with a book that you've already found, say in the Baylor Library catalog, and then find that exact same book in Worldcat, but go to the subject terms and click on those in order to find other books like that may or may not be at Baylor. You can even search the other subject terms that are identified with that book, right? Nearby subject terms to do the same sort of thing. That's a great way to fill out a bibliography and make sure that you know you're getting basically all the literature on this subject instead of just the things that Baylor has. So let's take, for example, Cahill's book, Recasting the Vote. What we can do to use this is we go and access Worldcat. Best way to do this is to go back to the Baylor Library page, click on Databases, and then this one is so popular, it's such an important database that this one is right on the home page. See it right here? Worldcat. Boom. And then what I do is I just try to find that book on Worldcat first. So I plug in the author's name and an abbreviated title. When I search, boom, I find it, right? But let's say we just want to use this to find other books like it. Well, again, the way to do this is to use the subject terms. And here again, we have some really helpful ones. Say, women's suffrage, United States history. This looks like a really good one for our historiographic essay. So if we click on this, look at that. We're going to get a lot more books. 2,100 results in just this one subject term. So you might actually need to zoom in even further, right? Look at subject terms that are even more specific. Or you can just spend some time browsing and looking to see if any of these are worthwhile. The case in point is that this is going to rapidly expand your catalog of books, right? Your potential books that you can find. And of course, you can use any of the other search criteria or things to narrow the results by, say, date of publication or something like that too. That's a great way to build up your bibliography. So what happens if you find something on Worldcat that Baylor doesn't have, but you want to use? Well, then you use a process called Interlibrary Loan. Interlibrary Loan is essentially an agreement that Baylor has with lots of other universities all across the world to sort of loan each other books when they're requested. So you can get virtually any book in the world if you want through Baylor. And it's all free, totally, utterly free. The system we use to manage interlibrary loan is called OSOFast. I'm going to show you how to put in an OSOFast request in just a second. All right, so what if we found some books using WorldCat, but Baylor doesn't have them? So from the search that I did before on women's suffrage in the United States, one of the books that I found was this one, Tara McCarthy's Respectability and Reform, Irish-American Women's Activism, 1880 to 1920. Let's see if Baylor has it. Well, you can see here that it's suggesting that it's at other libraries worldwide, which is another way of saying Baylor doesn't have this one. So what do? Well, the easiest way to deal with this is just to click on the book. And then look at what happens. WorldCat has this wonderful feature where it integrates into Baylor's catalog, and you can press this button right here. Request item through interlibrary loan. That'll take you straight to OSOFast and have you doing it automatically, really, really easily. But let's pretend like we're doing it the old-fashioned way. Well, we go back to the Baylor Library webpage. And on the front page of the Baylor Library website, you can see this button right here, OSOFast. If you click on that, it's going to ask you to sign in. And then it's going to get you to this kind of main screen where you can place a request. See that you can request lots of different things. For our case, we're going to be requesting a book. So if you click on that, it gives you a form to fill out. You're going to add in the title, the author, the format, everything like that. And then just go down to the bottom and click Submit Request. When you do that, what's going to happen is it's going to go to the Interlibrary Loan office. They're going to order the book. And when it comes in, they're going to email you. And you can just go straight to the library and pick it up. All right, so we figured out how to find books. Now, how do we find articles? Well, first thing you could try is going to the Baylor website and using the one search bar. It'll search for journal articles too, but I don't really recommend this, and here's why. OneSearch is going to search, the keywords that you put in, and it's just going to search the whole of Baylor's catalog, everything that Baylor has subscription to and everything. This is good, it's really powerful, but for our purposes, it's a little unhelpful. And that's because we're really looking specifically for works written by historians. We don't want works written by, scholars of other fields necessarily. And OneSearch, unfortunately, doesn't really know that. OneSearch is just going to search any article with the keywords that you put in, whether it be from a political scientist or from a sociologist or a biologist or anything, really. So how do we get articles by historians? Well, the way to find articles is to use databases. And the two most important ones, the ones I suggest to start with, are Historical Abstracts and America, History, and Life. These two databases are essentially the same exact thing. They search through a sort of catalog or an index of articles published in major historical journals all over the world. The only difference between the two databases is that America, History, and Life focuses all on journals that are about American history, and Historical Abstracts focuses on journals that publish on basically the history of everywhere except the United States. So the best place to start for articles, historical articles, right, are these two databases. But here's the thing to know about using Historical Abstracts and America, History, and Life. It will tell you what articles exist, but it won't get those articles for you. To actually get the articles, you're going to have to use our old friend OSOFast. Now remember before, right, this is our screen from OSOFast. You can request lots of different things. If we wanted to request a book, we could, click on this one for books, scores, or media. But it's just as easy to request a journal article. In fact, it's even easier. If you click here and request an article, you put in all the information for the book and the journal title and the article title and everything like that. When you click Submit Request, they're not just going to send you the journal. Actually, what they're going to do is they're going to scan the article and send it to you directly to your email as a PDF. And the best part about it is that this is really quick. They can usually get you articles within a few days. So when you find something using Historical Abstracts or America, History, and Life, the first thing you'll do is go to OSOFast and request it. And within a few days, you'll have it in your inbox. So let's say Historical Abstracts and America, History, and Life are tapped out, though. You've done all you can there, and you can't really find anything. Where else could you search for articles? Well, the next best database that I recommend is called Academic Search Complete. Academic Search Complete is another really powerful database. It searches journals of all kinds, right? So it's a little more like OneSearch in that it's not specifically for history journals. So you have to do the work of making sure that you're getting things from history journals specifically. But the best part about Academic Search Complete is that it's really recent, right? The database searches journals and published all the way from, 100 years ago or even beyond, all the way to like last year. And when it gives you references, more often than not, it has links to the full text scans of the articles that you can get right away. Then finally, if those don't work, you can go to our old friend Jstor. Jstor is a great database. It has full text articles. The downside with Jstor is that its purpose is not to function as a search database. Its purpose is to essentially be like a digital archive. Jstor stands for Journal Storage. So it doesn't have journals published really, really recently. I think it usually goes up till about 5 or 8 years ago. That's the most recent stuff it has. But it contains runs of some of the most popular and some of the most important historical journals that are out there. So it's a good last place to look. Okay, last but not least, how do you find essays? This one is pretty straightforward. There's really one database, or two databases, but they're kind of the same thing. Two databases that really get you anywhere with finding essays. The first is called Essay and General Literature Index. Again, you can just find this by clicking on databases at the Baylor Library website. The second is the Essay and General Literature Retrospective. Okay, what are these things? These are just databases of essays, right? They mostly just have references. Again, once you find them, you'll just have to put in an OSOFast request and they will scan it for you and deliver it straight to your inbox. What's the difference between these two databases? Well, one of them covers things written from 1985 to the present, and the other covers things written from 1900 to 1984. That's it. That's the only difference. So give these a try, plug in some keywords, search around, see if you can find any essays that are out there, and then order them through OSOFast. Easy peasy. Okay, my last suggestion for finding secondary sources is to poach the notes. So you remember what this means. Poaching the notes essentially means going through the footnotes and the bibliography of a source that you have, say a journal article or a book or something, and then basically just using that as a way to fill out your own bibliography, right? Take the things that person cites and go find them yourself. And this is a repetitive process. So if you have a book and you poach the notes of that book and you find another book, get that book and then poach the notes of that book, and then lather, rinse, repeat. This is honestly the fastest and most efficient way to fill out your bibliography. The one challenge with poaching the notes, of course, is that you can only ever find things printed before the first work that you find. So it's always best to have your beachhead source be a really, really recent work, because then when you poach the notes, you'll have a lot longer span of time that you can sort of search for. If you start with a book that's published in 1975, that means that the only sources you're going to find by poaching the notes are things published before 1975. But poaching the notes can be really great because it will not only give you great books, articles, and essays, but it'll usually give you books, articles, and essays that are really directly relevant to the historiographical debate of that book. Okay, so what have we learned? Well, first, we've learned that the main secondary sources that academic or professional historians focus on are books, articles, and essays. The second thing we've learned is that books, articles, and essays are largely defined by peer review. A good academic piece of history is a thing that has gone through the process of peer review. And the easiest way to tell if something's gone through peer review is if it's published by a university press. Third, I've shared with you my tips on how to find secondary sources. All those databases I've mentioned, from Worldcat to historical abstracts to Jstor, are all incredibly important and useful tools for you to do research in this class, but also going forward. Okay, let me finish with a few other thoughts. First, OSOFast is incredibly, incredibly important and useful. Almost all of you are going to have to use OSOFast for at least something in this project. But remember that OSOFast can take a little bit of time to get things to you. Books can sometimes take a week or maybe even more to be shipped here, or articles can take some days to get sort of scanned and emailed to you. So again, I just want to implore you, start your research now. Don't wait, because it takes a while to get these resources in. Second, these databases that I told you about are really, really important, and it is so much better to use these databases than to just go off into the big bad world of Google and think you're going to find good academic history there. Chances are you're not. Chances are you're just going to get confused and find your way into sources that aren't going to be worth your while at all for this project. So use the databases that I just showed you about here. Don't go Googling things. The purpose of this whole lesson is to prepare you to write a historiographic essay. Now, I've already told you about what a historiographic essay is, but just keep in mind that this kind of research is the kind of research that historiographic essays are built from. And really what that means is that you are looking for sources by historians. That's not because journal articles written by sociologists are bad or anything, right? They're great pieces of scholarship. But because the work of historiography is the work of understanding what historians have been talking about and how historians have approached the past. So when you go about doing your secondary source research, make sure that you're finding works by historians. That's really, really important. Okay, that's it for this video. Good job. See you in class.